Dune. What do we know about it? Face value. There's books. Alien planet. Big ass worm. Flying vehicles. Fucking Timothy Chalamet. These are all things, face value, what I know about Dune. Okay? I've never seen the movies. I've never read the books. And now, there's a game. Developed by Funcom, the creators of Conan Exiles and Metal Hellsling, as well as the new game that just released, Aloft. These guys are in development of a game called Dune Awakening. And face value, what we know about it, it's a MMO, PvP, and why? Essentially, from what we can tell from the game photos as well as the gameplay trailers, this looks like essentially a Conan Exiles, but in Nevada. And who am I, if nothing but a hater, essentially. So I decided, instead of just talk about something that I didn't really know a lot about, I decided to watch the movies. I thought about reading the books. I'm not gonna read the books. I'm sorry. I'm not that sorry, to be honest.
Bro, look at this dude.
I'm not reading the books. I'm sorry. But watching the movies, though, we decided to get a couple friends together and watch through both of the Dune movies, and this is how that went. The movie starts with main character Paul having dreams about the planet of Arrakis and the inhabitants of the planet called the Fremen. Paul's home, known as Caladan, is being governed by his father Leto and family known as the House of Atreides, until the Empire basically says that they can choose to go to war or govern the deserts of Arrakis to farm a resource called spice. Arrakis was originally governed by the Harkonnens, essentially the main antagonists of the story. They pull all their ships from the planet waiting for the people of Caladan to arrive. It is found out pretty early in the film that Paul is special. His mother trains him in the way of the voice. His mother is a Bene Gesserit, which is the closest thing to a witch in the series, basically. They have the ability to use their voice to bend the will of whoever is listening. Initially, Jessica, Paul's mother, was instructed by her mentor to only bear daughters, but she believes that Paul is what they call the One. The One is also referred to as the Kwisatz Haderach, the fucking croissant itself, the fucking croissant. The House of Atreides' arrival on Arrakis is held as a large ceremony. As Paul and his mother walk across the landing pad, Fremen all watching the arrival start to cheer Lisan al-Gaib, which translates to Voice of the Outer World. As the movie progresses, you start to learn that Paul's family was brought here by the Empire to fail. They did this because they fear the myth of the Lisan al-Gaib, which also is a really fun word to say. It's a really fun word to say. That's a cool word. When night falls, the Harkonnens onslaught the House of Atreides, leaving nothing but rubble in the wake of the attack. Paul and his mother end up being captured and exiled into the desert. Paul decides to start looking for the Fremen across the desert and ends up in worm territory. The worm, also called Shah-Hulud, I butchered the fuck out of that one. Basically, the big-ass worm ends up chasing Paul and Jessica before they can get to some rocks for safety. Here they meet a group of Fremen who end up offering to guide them through the desert. Not everyone is convinced that Paul is the Lisan al-Gaib, though. Shani, played by the love of my life, Zendaya, has doubts. When the group ends up departing, a member from the Fremen does not accept Paul and Jessica to be traveling with them. So he threatens Jessica and asks who will be her champion. Paul steps forward, as he should. That's his mother. That's what he should do. Chani, presuming that Paul was going to lose the fight, gifts him with her aunt's crysknife, which is essentially a tooth that came from the sandworm that is very respected amongst the Fremen people. And she gave him this so that essentially he can die with honor. Paul, though, has never taken a life, and during the combat he spares the man's life multiple times until he is told that he wouldn't stop until one of them was dead. Paul ends up stabbing the Fremen in the back, taking his first life. After the fight, we see Shani, Paul, Jessica, and the Fremen start to embark into the desert, where Shani says, "This is just the beginning." And that's where the first film ends. Honestly, I would probably give this first film either a 7 or an 8 out of 10. I actually really enjoyed my watch, even though I was watching it with friends and stuff like that. it didn't really take me out of the story. I was pretty like engaged. The soundtrack, I would just like to say, was absolutely incredible. I absolutely love the soundtrack in this movie. It's an absolutely star-studded cast. You have Jason Momoa, you have Timothée Chalamet, you got Zendaya, you got Dave Bautista. I'm sure there's people in there that I'm fucking missing. I thought it was a great watch, to be honest. I enjoyed my watch through it. Now we're gonna watch the second movie. The second film starts right after the events of the last film. Paul and the group gets approached by an ambush team. They end up calling a worm to escape the ambush using a thumper. Paul now isn't afraid to take a life and is low-key now ruthless, to be honest. Bo, is that Christopher Walken?
Nothing.
What the fuck? Fremen don't accept Jessica and Paul at the compound that they end up making it to. It's here they put the water collected from Jamis, the man that Paul killed, in a sacred water deposit not meant for drinking. Jessica is informed that the Fremen's reverend mother is dying. Jessica must take her place, but first must drink from the water of life. Paul then begins learning Fremen ways and traditions. After this, an ambush on the Harkonnen spice fields proves that Paul is capable enough to handle himself and help the Fremen. Once vilified, Paul is now accepted by the Fremen. He earns his name of Usul and chooses Muad'Dib as his name, which is translated to the mouse that roams the desert. And then we have to watch these two beautiful lovebirds kiss. It's here soon after we figure out that the Emperor will take away the spice from the Harkonnens if they don't increase their spice production. Paul calls Shai Hulud with a thumper so that he can show that he's a Fremen by showing him that he can ride a fucking worm, dude. Jessica now needs people to believe in the Lisan al-Gaib, so she decides to head south in order to spread the faith. The legend of the Muad'Dib spreads across the north, causing concern for the Harkonnen spice operations. Stories of Paul spreads to the Emperor, theories of the Muad'Dib being Paul Atreides. And somehow, Paul's mentor ends up surviving the attack on the Atreides family. He tells the Fremen about nuclear weapons that Paul's father had hidden underneath their compound. Jessica ends up arriving in the south to spread word of the Lisan al-Gaib, as well as find out how the water of life is created. While this is going on, the Fremen compound that Paul was staying at was attacked by Harkonnen artillery, completely collapsing the cave into the sacred water. After the attack, the survivors head south after getting a transmission calling all the Fremen leaders to a meeting. Paul has been having visions of the south, and if he goes with the Fremen, it'll lead to nothing but death and famine. He decides, regardless of his visions, he heads south, bringing him to the hideout where the water of life is created. Paul ends up drinking the water of life, where he ends up dying and having visions of what he needs to do next. Chani ends up feeding him her tears mixed with the water of life in order to bring Paul back from the dead. Doing this and bringing Paul back from the dead further solidifies him being the Lisan al-Gaib. At this point in the film, Paul has gained millions of followers who consider him the Lisan al-Gaib. Once the Emperor and his army arrives, the Fremen use the sandstorms and the sandworms to diminish their numbers. Paul ends up getting his revenge by killing the Baron for murdering his father. Once faced with the Emperor, Paul says that he would spare his life for the hand of his daughter so that they could rule together, completely cucking Zendaya. The movie ends with protagonists getting on a ship and presumably going to war, leaving room open for a sequel. And that's pretty much it. I will say that there's definitely things that were in this movie that maybe I didn't appreciate as much as I did in the first film. I thought that the soundtrack in the first film was absolutely incredible. I thought that it was a little lackluster in this one, but maybe it's just because they were more focused on different things. I will say that the second film is absolutely way more action oriented. There's a lot more sandworm scenes. There's a lot more like fighting sequences. It's a lot less talking about politics and building the world, which I appreciate just because the first movie did feel kind of slow. But yeah, if I was going to rate both of these movies, I would have to say the first film probably an 8 out of 10. This second film maybe a 7, maybe a 7 out of 10. And that's it. That's the whole Dune franchise. That is the whole series. Dune Awakening, the game, is going to be coming out here in the next month or so. I probably am not going to play it. I'm not a big Conan Exiles guy. I honestly enjoyed making this video. It took me a little bit more time to edit everything together than I thought it would, which is kind of unfortunate. So appreciate the watch, and I will see you guys later.